A political dispute turns into gunfire on the streets of the Somali capital. There's anger about delayed elections. So will Somali politicians find a common ground, or will this crisis derail the recent progress towards stability? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Hashim Al-Barra. Somalia has been working towards stability since its first democratically elected government in decades came to power in 2012. But a dispute about this month's delayed election is fueling divisions and worsening clan-based grievances. The presidential vote was missed after the government failed to agree with regional leaders on how the polls should be held. Now there's anger and confusion as to whether the president should remain in office after his term expired. The standoff led to gunfire on the streets of Mogadishu on Friday. We'll bring in our guests in a moment, but first, this report from Catherine Soy.
Barely had a protest march started near the airport when this happened. An intense firefight between government forces and pro-opposition fighters. The demonstration had been called by opposition presidential candidates and was being led by some of them. They included Somalia's former Prime Minister Hassan Khaire and opposition leader Abdirahman Abdi Shakur Warsame. They are angry about delays in holding a presidential election and the continued stay of Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo in the top post after his term expired 2 weeks ago. The opposition blames government forces for provoking the fight.
Today, security forces opened fire against us as we led our peace rally in Mogadishu. This happened as the event was being widely watched in the media and the world. As a result of this, some have died and others were wounded.
But Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble says opposition fighters fired the first shot.
Every citizen has the right to demonstrate peacefully, and for the security services to be the ones to guard the demonstrators and ensure their safety. But we will not accept demonstrations guarded by forces outside the state apparatus. This is unacceptable. The Constitution does not accept, and we won't accept it in any shape or form.
Several people were injured and buildings around the airport destroyed by a rocket-propelled grenade launched by unidentified men. 3 other presidential candidates were also caught up in an exchange of gunfire between security forces and unknown gunmen at a hotel in the city early on Friday. They accused the president of ordering the attack, saying it was an attempt to assassinate them. Mogadishu is now calm but tense. Many people say they want an end to the insecurity and uncertainty, but they also know the longer their political leaders fail to agree on how an election will be run and who will be in charge of the country in the meantime, the worse the situation can get. Catherine Soy, Al Jazeera.
Let's take a closer look at Somalia's long struggle to restore stability. It hasn't had a stable central government since 1991, when the regional leaders overthrew Mohammed Siad Barre and led to decades of civil war. In 2007, Al-Shabaab fighters advanced into southern and central Somalia and controlled large swathes of the country. They were pushed back by Ethiopian and African Union forces in the years that followed. By 2012, Somalia's first former parliament in more than 2 decades was sworn in. But the government struggled to assert control beyond Mogadishu. Now the nation is facing the continued attacks by Al-Shabaab, COVID-19 and the locust infection that's created food shortages. Let's bring in our guests in Mogadishu. Hussein Sheikh Ali, founder and chairman of the think tank Hiral Institute. In Birmingham, the UK, Abdiwali Garad, a political analyst and doctoral student at the University of Birmingham. In Minneapolis, Minnesota, Muhammad Ali Hassan, founder and president of the Somali American Peace Council. Warm welcome to you all. Hussein, why haven't elections been held on time as per the law?
Well, it's the question that everybody's asking. Why it's not the first time actually that election is delayed from its date But this time, what is happening is this delay is coming at a time that there's no agreement on A, the model, B, and a political agreement where all actors are happy with the kind of model that people can feel that they have a shot on these elections. So 2012, it was delayed almost a year, and 2016-17, it was delayed under 5 months. But that was more stable than this because this time it's more contentious, and the current president have not been forthcoming and giving the other stakeholders the confidence that they wanted from the current administration.
Okay. Mohammed, who should we blame for this particular delay? The political establishment represented by President Farmajo, or is it the situation is very difficult with COVID-19 and therefore it's about time to give the country a chance to get its act together before moving to the ballots?
Well, I blame President Farmajo because the previous guys, although they extended in 6 months or 1 year, they were going through a process. If you cannot make an agreement with the regional governments, it's very difficult, and you have to make some concessions. Like in the case of Gedo, it's supposed to be coming under Jubaland, and I tell you, the other problem in Somalia, one thing they were good about it, besides the military dictatorship, was always having a peaceful reconciliation. This time, President Farmajo and his administration, they dropped the ball. So I blame squarely the problem, although there was also some problems to go around. Most of the problem goes because the buck should stop with the president.
Abdiwali, is it about the modality of the vote, which is not anyway a perfect thing for a country like Somalia, because it's a process where people agree on a super delegate, and that delegate is going to choose the parliament in its own turn will choose the president. Is this the particular problem that is facing the nation as we speak now?
I think before I go into that, my fellow countryman assessment is a little bit too simplistic and to point a finger to one person and instead of discussing about the modality and the situation of Somalia, so many stakeholders have hand and wants the outcome to have a role in it. This includes the regional governments, that includes the Gulf states, and many stakeholders within Somalia. And Somalia is in a situation where the government is not able to execute what the laws of the country and what has been agreed upon. And that was the background of the foundation. About the modality, there was a law passed in October 2020, which was an annex to agreement of 17 September, which was the model and which the federal member states and federal government have agreed upon, and the timeline and the modality of the election. And that law number 20, allows the government and national institutions, including federal member states, the government and the prime minister, including the president, to be in power while they will be replaced. I think and pointing the finger to any particular is too simplistic. The other thing I want to add into that, and aside from the supposition or simplistic things, and the opposition and I put it and this into presidential aspirants and who call themselves and presidential and candidates. The presidential candidates of Somalia is more than 100 because there was a provisionally registered political parties who have all of them and a candidate of more than 100. It's 101 in my record.
Okay.
And these presidential candidates, which includes 2 former presidents, are part of that. But they put their card onto federal member states rather than putting their card into a political party where there was a party law.
But this has always been the nature of political landscape in Somalia. Let me just go to, I'll get back to you, but for the time being, let me go to Hussein Sheikh Ali. Hussein, was it smart for the opposition to decide that after February the 8th, no more recognition of the legitimacy of President Farmajo?
Well, I'm not a legal expert, but it clearly the Farmajo is in a very difficult and unknown territory where we haven't been before, because the earlier extensions that we were talking about, that they were some sort of an agreement with the rest of the stakeholders. This time, 8 February passed while the current president have no agreement with the other stakeholders to accept that he will be in charge in the country until election happens. Mm-hmm. So that's why the argument of the opposition figures and even some of the regional states arguing that the president is staying in the village Somalia illegally, mm-hmm. and the president is not clearly explaining himself, even the difficulties. He kind of go around every time that the public want to hear from him what are his excuses. Mm-hmm. He goes about blaming everybody else but himself, including foreign states. And this is the most ridiculous argument that people love hearing.
In such particular situation, normally in any other decent country, you would have the highest constitutional authority is coming forward and saying, basically, this is the situation the way it is, and this is our own interpretation of the constitution, and therefore this is the way it should be moving forward. Mohammed, this looks like a politically motivated move by all the parties just to gain more political advantage, to the point where Jubaland leaders, for example, are saying the reason why they are concerned about the modalities of the vote, they think that Farmajo is trying to manipulate the vote of their own area from Mogadishu.
Absolutely right. And let me respond to my friend.
Very briefly, please, if you don't mind.
Yes, it is not basically symbolistic, my answer. I just answered the question I was asking. In America, it's something we call the backstop to the president. This current president failed Somalia big time. The other three regions that is siding with him, he manipulated, he broke stooges. So if you're doing gerrymandering, and the trust will not go. Other presidents before him, eventually they compromised it, and there was some election. So the blame has to go to the president.
Okay.
I'm not making simplistic about it. The other question that you asked, you're right. We don't have a good model to follow in Somalia. I think if it's my choice, I would have like a central government that's not very strong during the dictatorship and have regional autonomy. This federalism doesn't work. We don't need to have every region to say a president. We should have only one president at a time. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of problems in Somalia, of course. But the current situation, I blame squarely the guy who left the United States, who's actually like dictators.
All right. Abdiwali, I'm just listening to you. It's quite obvious that Somalia has... It will take some time for the Somalis to move forward and forget about decades of civil war, tribalism and regional politics. Abdiwali, this is a decisive year for Somalia. Either you have elections move forward or the nation could descend into further chaos and anarchy. Is there a general sentiment among huge sections of the society that it's about time for the Somalis to set aside all those regional differences for them to build a unified country?
I think, I believe the Somalis, and most of the Somalis want to move forward and to get out of this impasse. They wanted election to happen, and that is also where the stand of the Somali helpers and international community, including the UN, EU, and Amazon. They wanted the agreement, the 17 October agreement, to go ahead. They do not want parallel processes. and that is what the Somali people want.
Okay.
The federal government, and yes, we can point the finger, but we have to let them and execute that. But if we blockade that, and a lot of people are saying there's a fear that Farmajo will return and he's more popular than any other aspirant, and that's why they wanted to force him out from the office,
okay,
and to go back to
well, this is
to the model of 2004.
well, this is something that will have to be ultimately
Well,
decided by the Somali voters. Although I think we should agree that this is not a perfect political model, because the election itself is really not reflective of what society should be doing. Look at the other neighboring countries. They have gone a long way when it comes to representative democracy and transparency. Hussein, big shots here in the election. You have former president, and you have the current president Farmajo, former president Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, and you have Sharif Sheikh Ahmed, and also you have the former prime minister. Who stands strong chances to be elected president?
Who could have strong chances? Well, we are not there yet, to be honest, because we need to know exactly how things will pan out in terms of the model and the modalities, and because here in Somalia, the election model is not a one person, one vote, where the delegates and many other stakeholders involved. But obviously, the big names that you mentioned, that tells, because of you mentioned, they are the biggest chances. But there's also other people who are being part of the opposition, who have been campaigning very long time. So I would not put my bet yet.
Mohammed, do you have any concerns that if the Somalis miss this particular opportunity, 2021, they could go back to the years of civil war?
Well, I pray that will never happen. That was a bad lesson. That's why I'm blaming the current president. If there would have been some sort of a concession from his side, because he's the main guy there would have been a chance. Plus, in our lifestyle or way of life, it says, "Yu'tul mulku man yasha." That's a verse from the Quran. God gives whoever is going to become. Farmajo, nobody was expecting to come out, and everybody celebrated, including myself. But unfortunately, he is not popular the way my brother is saying somewhere in Memphis. He is actually knows and trying to do all this gerrymandering. Out of the 5 regions, 3 of them he manipulated people who are students there, and the other 2, I'm glad that Woodland and Jubaland refused it, because otherwise he would have easily become. We need a fair, the 3 issue that's not going through. The commission that's supposed to elections to be fair, not some people from the Secret Service and the government. The most important part is the Somalilanders who are in Mogadishu all these years, who want to unity. They try to manipulate them. That's completely wrong. There's a professor who just left here, Abdi Samatar, which I really admire the guy. He went there and the group came out. He said, we were not part of this decision. We've been manipulated. We should never do that, because that will split the country. So I really would like to see
the reason
where the president himself is from. It's a tribalism mentality. How are you going to advocate? God is not going to be part under Madoe. He's in charge for Jubaland.
The reason why I'm asking you about the potential for this to descend into anarchy and civil war, and let me go to Abdi Wali, is that the grievances you are talking about are the same that were replicated since the 80s, when people were frustrated with Siad Barre and they said he dismissed other clans and he favored his own clan into government. We're seeing the same pattern being replicated across the political landscape in Somalia. So Abdi Wali, how are you optimistic that tomorrow is going to be a better day for Somalia?
I believe and it will be a better day for Somalia, and it will rather opposite. And Farmajo hails to same clan as Ahmed Madobe and Deni, who are the regional authorities who are against him. So in that sense, I cannot see any tribal forces and playing a big role in the Somali politics today. And what was happening in Mogadishu also was a reflection, and that the presidential aspirants who are same clan could not mobilize the people of Mogadishu yesterday. So that is not the case. I have a confidence in that. And the other things, and the big and obstacles and bigger points that this election has is the case which has been mentioned, and the Somaliland case, and the case of a Gather region in particular. And the Gather, Ahmed Mudobe of Jubaland, was in power for 9 years, and he has never controlled Gather region, particularly in Garbahari. They never recognized him, and he has never been president. I've been listening, and he repeated 3 times calling some former president and state presidents stooges. But the reality on the ground is Ahmed Mudobe has never been the president of all Jubaland. And one region is controlled by Al-Shabaab, and another region was free for 9 years. And he controls few kilometers within Kismayo.
Okay.
So pointing the finger and to afar is not good.
All right. So now speaking of Al-Shabaab, I have to move forward because I have other angles to cover here, if you don't mind.
I want to say about Somaliland case, which is very important. The Somaliland.
Hussein, do you have any concerns that this could play into the hands of Al-Shabaab? They will take advantage of the situation. They see the political impasse, they see the popular disenchantment over their political leaders, and they could just stage a comeback like they did in the 2000s.
Well, I think this is the travesty of the situation here, where we had about 20 minutes discussion, and this is the first time we're mentioning Al-Shabaab. And we are not alone here in this discussion, even in Mogadishu, where Al-Shabaab is the biggest tax collector authority in the capital and in the entire country, who controlling most of the territory of Somalia, is completely out of the picture. We are just talking about elections and a dispute of the politicians who barely control anything. And if the situation continues the way it is now, obviously they are the ones who can easily take advantage, and they can run over many cities that is in our hands today.
Mohammed, in less than 30 seconds, do you have the same concerns that the gains made over the last 10 years could be easily wiped off, and we will see Al-Shabaab regain control of the capital, Mogadishu, if the situation remains the way it is? 30 seconds, please.
Well, my friend is talking about the taxation they do in Ahmed Mudobe Jubaland. They do it in Mogadishu, the double taxation. Actually, one of the main problems we're not talking about addressing, besides the problem of Al-Shabaab, which I agree with you guys, Banadi region has been taken the rights. I was living more than 30 years, the most powerful city in the world, Washington, D.C. We have a tax that says taxation without representation. It's a must.
Thank you.
Formaggio cannot just say, I give 13 people.
This is going to be my
regional autonomy at Benadir.
This is going to be my last question to Abdiwali. What a country of wasted opportunities, a gatekeeper to the Red Sea, gateway between the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea, the longest coastline in the African continent. Still, we're talking about the same problems the country has been grappling with for decades and decades.
I think there was a lost opportunity, which the presidential aspirant could have stick to one man, one vote, which they missed, and they delegated to federal member states. They missed to stick to electoral law, which was there, and electoral commission, which will take part in vanishing them. I think that was an opportunity which was missed.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Hussein Sheikh There's Ali. No control. How can you make one man, one vote? It's impossible.
You know, Abdiwali Garad and Muhammad Ali have. But you know what? At the end of the day, this is my hope. I just hope that the Somalis will set aside those differences, look at their neighbors in West Africa, countries that have gone through the same tragedies, but at least managed to put together, stitch together a vibrant democracy. Look at Rwanda, look at other countries in the West African, the western part of Africa. Thank you. I really appreciate insight. And we will continue to revisit this story in our next episode. Hussein Sheikh Ali, Abdiwali Garad, and Muhammad Ali Has, I really appreciate your contribution. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. For further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Hashim Al-Bara, and the entire team here in Doha. Bye for now.